Welcome back, everyone, to this penultimate session in the A4Q Testing Summit Edition 2024. And what a summit it's been. I'm delighted to have with me now John Kurowski from the Explayer Academy. He is a principal instructor there. John, I'm not going to say too much more, but hand over to you. We'll have some questions at the end. And yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you, John.
You're welcome. Thanks, Debbie. Hello, everybody. And welcome to this. We're just going to present some slides and hopefully do a demo at the end on DevOps and testing in real life. So here's a quick picture about me, handsome dude. Basically, I've been with XPO Group just over 15 years as a full-time trainer. Burglars get out for less, and I do specialize in, develop and deliver DevOps courses, as well as Selenium and automation. So I do a lot of technical training, and also do the ITQB Foundation and ITQB Advanced. So we've recently just got the test manager accredited, and I have helped co-authored a book on test techniques with ITQB Foundation as well. Also deliver Agile too. And so I have been around delivering full-time training, as I say, for 15 plus years. So without further ado, let's get going. So what I'm going to talk about is basically a bit about DevOps, the myths and the misconceptions. And so I will talk about this. I'll try not to be too cynical. People say I'm cynical, but I don't always believe them. And what I'm going to do is go through some of the bits, explain some of the areas where it doesn't quite work so well. It doesn't, people try DevOps and then they may get burnt by it. And then at the end, if there's time, I'll very briefly show you the environment that we use for the DevOps training, just to show you very quickly the GitLab, the version control, and show you what an actual pipeline looks like. So in thinking of this, I kind of thought in terms of people, process, technology. People, who do we have? Process, what are they doing? Technology, what are they doing it with? And so in terms of looking at the people, there are a lot of places where they say, we're doing DevOps, or we're doing the DevOps. There's, you get places where people go, oh, we really need to get into the DevOps, and they will go out and buy what they think are the DevOps tools, and they will try and do the DevOps. And what I've got here is, I think it's topologies. It's a few different ways in which organizations end up sort of implementing DevOps. And so the first one, 2 of these are okay, 4 of them are not so good. But number 1 is basically DevOps is another silo. So if we're talking about an organization that's very much traditional, people are still working in silos, developers are very much working by themselves, and operations are working by themselves as well. Then you introduce another group called DevOps, and they basically become a silo by themselves. And so what would kind of happen at that point is you may have DevOps, it may succeed, it may not succeed, but it doesn't really impinge on the other 2 teams. And they may very well, sort of not exactly snub it, but not be terribly keen with it. Number 2 is DevOps basically becomes an advisor. You bring some people in and they become facilitators to help build the communication and the collaboration between the teams. The thing is, being in an advisory capacity does tend to mean that you may very well end up helping the teams. And so it could very well be that although they're trying to advise people how to embrace DevOps and move into the mindset and the culture, it could very well be that they become kind of like the firefighters. When you have one of the things with DevOps, it's very easy to, once you get the tools going, it's very easy to get things out into live very quickly. So fixing production issues, people at DevOps advisory capacity, they will have all of these skills with all of these tools. There's a very good chance they'll be dragged in to fix production problems and things. Number 3 is not too bad. DevOps is basically a shared operation. This is useful for organizations where they just have like the one main single product. So places like Netflix, maybe Spotify, that kind of thing. So 3, it can work, but the entire organization is basically working on just the one product. Number 4 is DevOps, but without the ops. And so basically DevOps is very much seen as part of what the developers are doing. One of the problems you get with DevOps is like DevOps. If you wrote dev in uppercase and ops in lowercase, some places developers go, well, dev is first, so obviously we're more important than operations. And you can get places where because the developers are technical and maybe the managers are not, they will then suggest things and the manager go, yeah, that sounds okay. So it can be a case with number 4 where development very much sort of take over the operations side of things. And so again, it's kind of, I mean, with silos, it's very much like the developers throw the code over a wall and the operations catch it and they try to make it go live. This could be the thing with number 4, is it's very much just piling things onto operations. So they're using basically all of their tools. Operations aren't involved much. Number 5 is DevOps, but without the dev. So this is where it's very much seen as from an engineering side. So the danger with this is because we're talking about operations and supporting the live systems, then they would be very much looking for people with the technical skills on cloud and automation and things. So they may not be looking for people so much with the soft skills for the communication and collaboration, which is what we need in DevOps. And the last one is basically the ideal. It's basically DevOps. So the whole organization is DevOps, and Dev and Ops are part of that, but there is so much more to DevOps than just development and operations as well. So the key thing with, from an organization point of view, is it is very much, DevOps isn't just a set of tools. You can't just say, oh, we're doing DevOps because I'm coding. It is a mindset and a culture. They've very much got to get into that. And cultures, it takes time to build. You can't say Monday, let's do DevOps go. It does take a long time to build the culture. It's got to be nurtured and grow in order for it to work. Now, when thinking about cultures and mindset, I very much think in terms of how we act and how we think. So when I've been to different places, you very much see people's approaches, what they think about certain things, certain issues, and also how they act, how they fix things and sort things out afterwards. So we're looking at good thinking, good, bad thinking, good acting, bad acting. DevOps is in top right-hand corner. So we're thinking the right way, we're acting the right way. So that is where we want DevOps to be. So in terms of the mindset, it is the right mindset. We've got the right culture, we've got the communication, got the collaboration, we've got the technical infrastructure, you know, everything is in place. So we're thinking about the right things and we're releasing these, it's getting out there. Now, a lot of organizations will be stuck in one of those amber ones. So the top left-hand corner, we're acting the right way, but we're not thinking the right way, is problematic, because we may very well have a wonderful set of tools, we may have a very good pipeline that's incredibly efficient, but if we're not thinking the right way, there's a very good chance we may send loads and loads of releases out that have got defects, that have got bugs, that have got problems. And there are dangers if you send something out with problems and then you send further releases out and then you then discover what the issue is. Very hard to work out where it was. So, you know, if we're not thinking the right way, it is very tempting with tools that are very fast to get things out there really quick and go, hey, wow, we got that out there really quick. But it is a case of less haste and more speed, less speed, more haste, whichever way that works. And it is a case of, you know, we've got to have an eye on quality. So in terms of releasing things, it is thinking the right way. Bottom right hand corner is the frustrating one. It's lost opportunities. You come up with really great ways of doing things, but it's very hard to get them out there. So for instance, if you've got organizations that are trying to move into the agile mindset and the agile culture, there can be people that are still managers. You still need to get their approval before things go through, or there are people that you have to convince this is the way to do things, and then they will let you actually do them. It's frustrating because if you are very technical, you've got I've heard of people where they've got all of the technical skills, they know all about the tools, they know all about hardware and networks and everything, but their opinions are not being listened to. So they have some really great ideas how to improve things, but unfortunately they can't get it through the necessary channels. The way I always think of this is, if you're trying to get a bridge, trying to get a boat along a river under a bridge, the obvious thing is to raise the bridge, but there's also lowering the water, and there are places where you actually discover it's easier to lower the water than it is to raise the bridge. It's basically lost opportunities. I won't talk about the bottom left-hand corner. It's bright red. It should be obvious. You know, if we're down in that corner, we're certainly not ready for DevOps, but we should be right-hand corner, the right culture, the right mindset. We should be there. Not only is it the right culture, the mindset, we've got to think about the environment as well. So woman called Dr. Amy Edmondson came out with a book on fearless organizations. It's great because it talks about the level of safety on the left-hand side. Along the bottom, it talks about drive. It's encouraging courageous behavior. So again, DevOps should be in the top right-hand corner. It's a very safe environment, and we're encouraging courageous behavior. So it's then okay to try things, give things a go, so we can innovate. So not only is it we're looking at the system the way it is now, but we can come up with new ways of improving it. And the environment's so safe, we can actually try these things out, and it's okay. If we're down in the bottom right-hand corner, then they're still encouraging courageous behavior, but it's unsafe. So the trouble with that is where you get the blame. So if things are going well, that's fine. If you release something and it goes wrong, that is where suddenly all the fingers point at you, and it is a place of anxiety. If everything's going okay, then you're all right. When things start going wrong, then yeah, your name becomes mud. People blame you, can be really bad. So it is a case of, if you put something out there, a major release or a release of some sort, and there's major production problems with it, if you're down in the bottom right hand corner, that could be where you get sacked, or things are really bad. If we're in the top right hand corner, well, then if there are major problems in production, then that is where we're all getting together, collaborating. We're then learning from the mistakes. What went wrong? How can we make sure we don't make the same mistakes again? And it's not blaming anybody, it's we as a team have either succeeded or we as a team have failed. So if there are things that have gone wrong in production, then we as a team need to learn about them. Is very much the top right hand corner. So they're encouraging courageous behavior. If things go right, that's great. If things go badly, then it's not a blame culture. It's just a case of we learn from those mistakes and carry on. So in the top right hand corner, you can get if it is suitably safe, you can then get into the worlds of anti-fragility. So not only is it you've got a reliable system, but with an anti-fragile system, not only is it sort of reliable, but you are actually trying to break it as well. And a lot of places, organizations do have issues with this. You have a system that's out in live and you're actually trying to break it. If it stays up, then it's an anti-fragile system's great, because if you're trying to break it, somebody else is going to try and go in and trying to break it instead. But when you learn about the breakages, it does make the system stronger, it makes it more resilient. And that is when we're in the top right hand corner, it helps that way. Top left hand corner is complacency. It's a very safe environment. They're not encouraging us to do anything courageous. So there's no changes, nothing changes. The system is fine the way it is. Nobody is ever sort of inspired to make changes, no incentive to do this. So this is places where people have been in jobs maybe for years. And the bottom left hand corner is apathy. It's an unsafe environment. They're not encouraging people to do things. So yeah, nothing gets done. There's no point doing things. You'll only get the blame if things go wrong. But we should be in the top right hand corner. So not only is there the culture and the mindset, there's also the environment of the organization. It needs to be a safe environment to encourage courageous behavior. We also have to think in terms of forming the teams. It's despite what people say, you can't sort of hit the ground running on day one. When you get a brand new team, it takes a while for the team to get going. So for them to be effective. So again, this is forming, storming, norming, performing. You get a group of people together. Then when they first get together, they're going through forming, where we're all really nice to each other and everything. And then after a couple of weeks, we then get the storming. So we know each other. Then the opinions get out. It's where we have the animated discussions. And at the end of this, we then have an understanding of how we're going to do things. So norming, there's like a standardized approach to this. And then after that, using the same approach, we can then start performing. And the trouble with teams is the minute one person leaves or another one joins, you do have to go through the forming and the storming again. So I've been in one place where they were sort of, I don't understand it. We were absolutely, we were getting on great last week, and this week we're not, we're at each other's throats. And I'm just explaining, well, this is just the way teams work. This is normal. We've gone through forming, we're now at storming. So it is a case of going through this. So with getting teams together, to get them effective can take a bit of time too. The other thing too is you've got to think in terms of the skills, how you train the team up. So ideally what we're looking at is T-shaped profiles. So the left-hand side is, they're I-shaped. Everybody is an expert, so they're expert in different shapes. But the idea being is they're experts, and so they need a manager to manage them. Whereas on the right-hand side, we've got the T-shaped, and so we've got different people The STEM is the areas that they're experts in, but the top of the T is where they have knowledge on everything. So they're not specialists in those areas, but they do understand those areas. So when you get those teams together, it basically means that the team can be self-managing, self-leading, whereas the specialists definitely need a manager to hand out the work. With T-shaped, we can hand it out between ourselves. So it does work this way. It's like I mean, I've seen, like, my son's playing Overwatch, and it's kind of interesting because I mentioned, hey, T-shaped profiles, and oh, Dad, when you do Overwatch, you're basically in a team of 6 people, and that team has to work together. And when the team are sort of setting up, my sons will watch and see who the different people are, and then they'll identify certain skills that are missing, like we might need a sniper, we might need a healer, and they will then select the appropriate person. So the team is much more sort of T-shaped. But it is a case of, with training, there can be people that are experts in areas, but there are things like business analysts would need to know more about testing, maybe more about automation, and and the automators would need to know more about the business and things. So in getting the skills across that way, then the team can cover everything they need to know. In terms of the process, there is a DevOps handbook written by Gene Kim and a few other people. It talks about 3 principles of DevOps. The first way is your standard traditional, which is development to operations. So again, if you think, I always think about it as developers produce the code, throw it over the wall, lands, and the operations then take it and run with it. It's very much one way. So I've been in places where I've been operations and the developers aren't that interested in when it goes live, and I've been on projects with developers where I sort of say, well, that might be a problem in live, and they'll say, well, it's somebody else's problem, we don't have to worry about it. So it isn't good. Second way is better, because operations can then give feedback back to developers as to how well these releases are going. But as you can see, it's a massive loop. So we're talking about releases that could be weeks, could even be months. We're talking about a massive release that goes into live, and then we get feedback as to how well it's going. But the ideal is getting down to the third way. So as you can see, it's continual learning, continual experimentation. So it's not releasing in big blocks, because that can be very high risk. We're doing lots of little releases, seeing how that release goes, seeing how the next release goes. If a release doesn't go too well, it's very easy to undo it and bring it back out again. There's a massive release, one little feature is not working correctly. Do you roll back the entire release, or do you send out another release to cover this? So in terms of third way, it is looking at continual learning and experimentation. So with this, we have continual feedback. So developers will be committing the code into version control. It will work its way through a pipeline. This is just some works to do this, and they will basically send the feedback back to the version control as to how well it worked. So it is a case of it's getting things out, continual feedback. Is it working? Okay, great. Now in live. As we're talking about testing as well, we do have to think about, there are different areas of testing, different levels, different test types that we need to consider. Now, with DevOps, basically you try and automate everything, automate almost everything. Quadrant 1 on here, Q1, is writing automated tests to test the code, which is probably the easiest way to write automated tests. On the right hand side, quadrant 4, that is where you got the load and the performance, we got the security. That is where we're using tools to do things. So again, this is another area that I absolutely love with the DevOps pipelines, is we can get tools to do these things for us as well. So in the utility testing, it can be things like maintainability. There's tools for code quality and tools for security, both dynamic security and static security. So we can, there's loads of tools down in quadrant 4. So from a DevOps point of view, the bottom 2 quadrants, we've usually covered. Quadrant 2 is more kind of at a system test level. It could be testing to satisfy the acceptance criteria. So as you can see, the cloud in the top left-hand corner is saying automated and manual. Ideally, we'd love to automate all of these, but we may still need a human being to be involved. So it is very easy to do quadrant 1, just write some automated tests to cover the separate pieces of code. But the code does all talk to each other. It's all integrated. We will need some tests up in quadrant 2. And then quadrant 3 is basically manual. It would be good to involve a human being. So sometimes there are places where the pipeline will stop And then some business users will come and do some user acceptance testing or some usability testing, look and feel, to see whether it's okay. And then if it is okay, carry on with some more automated pipeline stages afterwards. But it is a case of automation is very good at testing what you tell it to test. So we did have a project where the system produced 300 PDFs a day full of stats, and the automated test checked all the figures and they all added up okay. It was only when someone did it manually they noticed that the PDF should be landscape and they're actually portrait. So they looked really horrible when you actually read them. The numbers were all okay, but again, it is a case of you do need some human involvement occasionally just to make sure things are working as possible. So with usability, look and feel, of trying to find buttons and things, automated tests are very good at finding a button anywhere on the screen, but a human being may not spot it so well. But we do have to consider the different areas of testing when thinking about what we need to test. The other thing too is there's a relationship between development and testing. So again, we've got good development, good testing, bad testing. So in terms of testing, quoting ISTQB Foundation, we're measuring the quality of the software. We can tell you how good the quality of the software is, which is why both of those are verified. Now, again, DevOps, we want to be in the top right-hand corner. We want to be producing good quality code, and we want to have good quality tests to make sure it's working okay. In terms of the ambers again, the bottom right-hand corner, verified bad quality. The developers are not as good, dare I say it, as producing the code as they think they are, but because the testers, we're measuring the quality, we can actually find genuine defects. And so it would take longer for the system to get into live. I mean, if we're in the top right-hand corner, things will go into live much quicker. It'd be so much quicker to release things. Bottom right-hand corner, it's not as good, but it's basically, it is measuring sort of like measuring the quality. There is quality, we're producing defects. Top left-hand corner is not so good because basically the developers are actually producing things the right way. It's just the testers are finding defects where there are not defects in there. So the top left-hand corner could take even longer to get released. And again, I'm not going to talk about the red corner. That's pretty bad. But ideally, we want to be in the top right-hand corner. And as I say, top right-hand, bottom right-hand maybe after that. But if we're in the top left-hand corner, things could take a while to be released. In terms of technology, we have a pipeline. Everybody commits the code into the pipeline, so it goes through the pipeline. And so talking about lean, it's like a production line. Everything should go through at a nice, steady, constant pace. There shouldn't be any bottlenecks. If there are, you may slow the jobs down before it so we can get through that way. As we got the thing there, we can then have loads of feedback. And so with the feedback, we can then start seeing where things fail and come back again. So again, we can see with this, it failed twice and then it got across okay. So with this, we can then very much see where things are. In terms of feedback, we do have to think in terms of metrics. So things like the inputs and the outputs. I mean, I've got a pair of scales here. I want to lose weight. Lagging indicators, current state of play things are now. Leading indicators is indicators that can change your output. So if you're overweight, if you reduce the number of calories, let's say you measured 800 calories a day and you did 10,000 steps a day, then eventually that should change the lagging indicators. And so it should help with changing the lagging indicators. That said, there can be problems with this. So again, we want to be in the top right-hand corner. We've got good inputs producing bad output, good outputs. If we're in the bottom right-hand corner, we're producing good outputs, but we don't know how. It's basically lucky. If we're top left-hand corner, we've got good inputs, but it's not changing the outputs at all. Basically a mismatch. So if the system is very slow and we've got people to write the code so much more efficiently, but it could very well be there's a problem with the network or something. That could very much be where the problem is there. Last couple of slides, very quick, then I'll move on. There are, in terms of key DevOps metrics, the ones in the left-hand corner are the standard Google DORA metrics, which they suggest you measure. They are useful for the pipelines, for how often you deploy and everything. The ops on the other side, basically it's looking at the Looking at the live system, so how long does it take to do durations? Could very well be people are taking a long time to do an average session, but it could very well be because of, like the bottom there, the user experience is not very good, or they're doing lots of things. There's lots of interactions per visit. So again, we have some metrics off the back of this. There are some DORA results. They're in the State of DevOps report. So basically, it's a case of, I'm not going to go through them, but in following DevOps, everything does get increased. Everything is so much faster. Last thing to talk about very quick is when you've got things like a pipeline, you have a load of people with a lot of specialist skills, and you then get people where they want to build the pipeline one way, other people want to build the pipeline the other way. Another problem you get in places is if the pipeline is too confusing or the technology is too confusing, people start doing things their own way. So another way of sort of improving this is to split up. You have business teams and the platform team. The platform team sets up the platform that the pipelines run on and everything, and the business teams, they're just concerned with developing the software and the code. So again, this is something where you have people that come in that are technical. They're trying to implement their way of doing things, and there may be a way of doing it already. So if there's a platform team in there, we can have a standardized approach, which is very useful if organizations are producing lots of different things. Last thing to talk about, I'm going to very quickly, I haven't got much time, I'm just going to very quickly just show you, I've got an instance that I use. So in order to do a DevOps course, I had to create a DevOps pipeline. And so this is very much what I created. On the left-hand side is a GitLab server, which is my version control. So not only is it the version control, it's also got the details of the pipeline in there. So it's got the code to run to do the pipeline. In order to run things, it needs a runner. So most of the time you can see I've just got a standard Ubuntu server, which is like, I call it a shell runner. It just runs a lot of the tests for me. There's also a Docker runner. I managed to get Docker going. With the music store, I've also got SonarCube in there as well. And so that actually gives me a load of code analysis. And then in terms of deploying, I have a little load balancer with Ansible, and that is deploying to 2 live systems, which are blue and green. So I'm just going to very quickly go into this and just show you this. I have about 3 minutes, so I'm not going to take too long, but this is in terms of GitLab. I have a load of projects. As you can see, when I'm doing a course, each delegate has their own little project as well. I'm just going to show a demo pipeline, mainly because this is just the standard one you can get out of GitLab. I'm just going to try and run this. Fingers crossed it won't take too long. But in terms of running a pipeline, it is possible to give it variables. There are none in here because it's a very basic sort of system. But if I try and run this, it is useful because hopefully, this is the trouble when you do demos. There's a very good chance this is going to go wrong. So it's sitting here pending at the moment. But there are people where they do talk about the fact that they hear about pipelines, but they don't actually understand what a pipeline is. And I've taken people to this screen quite a lot. And as you can see, they can see things ticking, things passing as they go. And the last job is a deploy job. That's actually a manual one. So again, I said sometimes you may stop the pipeline to have some manual testing in there, some user acceptance testing. And then the last one could be actually deploying. This doesn't actually do anything. It's not actually doing much as it works. So yeah, but everything is passed. So everything is okay. But it's a very handy little screen just to show people. So they go, oh, I now understand what a pipeline does. I hear about pipelines. Oh, you can actually see things working. There is a more confusing one, which I ran it earlier. It does run, but I'm not going to run it now because it takes about 3.5 minutes and I don't have that long. So I've got a music store, which is sitting there. It is basically one where there are different albums. It's written with Apache, MySQL, and PHP, and it's got loads of albums in there. You can select albums, add them to your cart. We use it for the automation one. Now, the automation courses. Now, with this, there are a few things in there. So, for instance, the source Java, that is where all the automated tests are. The database is where the SQL is to refresh the database. The web server, music store, that is where all the PHP is. The CI YAML, that is where the continuous integration code is. And again, in the pipelines, I ran this earlier. And this one's a much more confusing pipeline because it does actually do analysis. It runs against SonarCube. And then in terms of building, it does testing. It runs Yeah, and another project, these are like the BDDs and the CDDs, and then it actually deploys to the website and everything. Now, I did actually get this to SonarCube. I managed to get it to talk there. So in terms of it, it passed. It's just everything is okay, just has a load of smells. It's at the minute all it's doing is checking the Java, and most of the Java, the automated tests, are not putting the expected value before the actual value, so it doesn't actually like this, but it is useful. It does actually show you all of the steps in here. So I have actually got code quality working on this, which is good. But as I say, you can see these things can become very complicated. Just to very quickly show in terms of things. Yeah, there is a blue server, there is a green server. These are the two that are live, and the load balancer is the one that actually does the deploying to the live server. So if I keep clicking this, it's going to go from blue to green because it's load balancing round robin between the two of them. And I think that's pretty much all I'm wanting to show. So as I say, that was a setup that I've got in there. It took a long time to do this, and that is pretty much everything I was going to say. So what I'm going to do is thank you for your time. Hope it's been useful. Hope it's been interesting. And I'll now hand over to Debbie.
Thank you, John. There's so much in there. Goodness me, you always excel in the amount of detail and the information that you give. So I'm sure people will want to look at that video again and again, because so much in it. And I know that we will make the videos available so people will be able to go back and recap, which is wonderful. Couple of questions I will ask. We can put those up. So you talked about your training environment. Did you have any issues setting it up?
Yes, I had loads of issues setting it up. Trouble is, with a lot of the tools, I mean, the ones I picked, a lot of them are open source. And so occasionally you would hit an obstacle. So for instance, getting GitLab to chat to SonarCube took a long time to do it. And it's not actually really, the solution isn't mentioned very well online. And I was trying to ask people, you know, because we have some experts, you know, how do I get GitLab to chat to SonarCube? And they're all like, oh, we don't use GitLab. We use this. We use that instead. And it's kind of, I think of it like building an ocean liner. You know, there's an engine, there's a propeller. And so when I'm going to people with the equivalent of, okay, when I'm at the engine, I can get the propeller to work. But when I'm at the bridge, I can't get the propeller to work from there. So what I want to do is work out why the bridge doesn't chat to the propeller. And then the other angle people have is, well, why are you building the ocean liner that way? Why don't you build it this way? We have this amazing tool, press this button, instant ocean liner. And you're like, well, that's all very good. But the other trouble with the training environment as well is I need to kind of get it back to the same restart point. And they're like, oh, because the big trouble with version control is when you have delegates go in and they update things and commit things, it's very hard to delete those and remove any trace that they were ever in there, because it's version control. It wants to make a log of everything. And if you get some other delegates, they're very clever at looking at the history and then just putting the code back in again. But in terms of setting up the environment, yeah, general rule of thumb with real life, there are no, you know, there are always going to be better tools out there. So, for instance, I've used GitLab and people have told me, oh, there's this tool, there's that tool. Why didn't you use this? Why didn't you use that? And there's loads of other tools I could use for things. So in setting up the environment, what I did was I also had to consider the fact that I don't have to do something that's industry strength. You know, we're not talking about something that's going to have 1,000 or 1,000,000 users. We're going to have at tops maybe about 25. Yeah. So in terms of setting this up, it's a very basic, it's like the minimum I can do. It's not like test-driven development, it's like training-driven environment. It's the smallest environment I need to get the training done, so it's enough to show the concepts. And so there are some tools I'm using that experts have told me is a bit of an odd decision, but I had to very much stick with things like open source. I couldn't use anything that was in the cloud because, you know, you can't store stuff on the cloud. And so it was very much working out things this way. And getting the whole thing to work is like a proper hallelujah moment. The minute you see a pipeline move from one to the other, yeah, and it actually does things. It is great.
Sounds very joyous, John, very joyous. Another question? You mentioned anti-fragility earlier. In passing, yeah, just put that in there. Smiley face. Is your course anti-fragile?
Yes, it is. The thing with anti-fragile is you got fragile systems which will fail. You do anything on them, they'll just collapse. There's robust systems which are incredibly strong and they're very reliable, but they're only reliable within certain parameters. The minute you start giving it other weird stuff, then the whole system fails. There's been a couple of those, I don't mention them, but there's been a few where someone's done something slightly different and the whole system has collapsed. The idea of anti-fragile, as I said earlier, is you do try and deliberately try and break it. So Nietzsche says whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So in trying to break things, it does actually make the system stronger. So there are places like, I think Netflix had the Chaos Monkey, which is equivalent of a monkey jumping around the computer and breaking things. And yeah, so it's like the equivalent of breaking stuff. And so it's and they actually run that in live, I believe. And it's a case of, with a course, yeah, it's it's kind of like Jurassic Park. When you're doing a course like this, not only are you building the theme park, you're also building the dinosaurs, and then you've got to do the ride afterwards. And we all know what happens in Jurassic Park. It is a case of not only setting up the exercises, but the environment for the exercises and getting everything to work. And there is an exercise which does deliberately not work. It is everybody trying to update the same project, and they do hit problems. And I absolutely love it because it always breaks, and you have a combination of experts, DevOps experts who want the accreditation, and other people at brand new that just want to learn about DevOps. And they actually work together as a team and they try and sort this out, and they've come up with different approaches to fixing this. And so it is great just to sit back and just watch, go, hey, we're coming up to the exercise, word of warning, it always fails. And you actually learn a lot more when things fail. But with an environment like this, with any technical course, there's always going to be things that don't go the way you expect them to. So I mean, today I was doing demos this morning just to double check it, and one of them was painfully slow, and I thought I'd never get it in half an hour, let alone the 3 minutes at the end. So yes, is my course anti-fragile? Yes, and it's good because it is.
So the learning. We're going to try to squeeze in one last little question here, possibly, but it's a very quick answer because we will move on. So you mentioned courageous behaviour, and my company hasn't quite achieved the culture described in the top right-hand corner. What can I do to help myself?
Oh, courageous behaviour. Basically, yeah, it's along the lines of, if the company hasn't achieved this thing, so if they are, as I said before, if they're encouraging courageous behaviour, but it's not a safe environment, then you're very much in an atmosphere of fear. And so the trouble with that is you daren't do anything, because if it goes wrong, then there's the blame culture. They will tell you how to do this. So it is really with the company. It is getting the collaboration and the communication. It's thinking about the fact that it is we as a team going through things. And so it's making a safe environment. When things go wrong, then they're quite upset. That is okay. If you ever see the film Diamonds Are Forever, there's an oil rig at the end that explodes, and what happened was the guy accidentally detonated it before they were ready, and so he went to the director and went, "I'm terribly, I didn't mean to do that, I'm really sorry." He went, "Don't worry, I can handle this." And every time the guy was trying to talk to, "I can handle this," and they just reset it all again, and they just did it all again. And it's just a case of, it's having the environment where people are encouraged to try other things out. So, you know, they have the courage to try these things. Most of the time they're going to work. If they don't work, it's you know, yeah, we learn from that. What did we get wrong this time? What do we make sure we don't do again? And it's very much from a team point of view, not pointing the finger at one person. It's just, you know, the team succeeding.
Wonderful. John, thank you. A diamond indeed. We've reached the end of this session. Yeah, many thanks. I know if there are some more questions, then we'll try to come back to people. Just a quick message to everybody, please stay tuned. We have one final session in our summit, and our sponsors will be here to say a big thank you to everyone and to give some final words. One last word of appreciation for John. And oh, by the way, don't forget to vote for your favourite presenter. We'll be collecting information about that. Thank you, Mr. Kurowski.
You're welcome.
Oh, take care. Cheerio, everybody.